It's not about how much you've done. It's not about the outcome of what you've done. But it's about what's the feeling that you're left with at the end of the day. And what is it that you're going to carry with yourself tomorrow? That's the feeling. That's the sense. As you have that sense, you're able to tap into a deeper sense of self. Beyond what you've seen and what you've touched and what you've heard. It's almost as if, as your attention goes inside, the breath becomes deeper. And you have a greater and a more subtle sense of self. Present in this moment as a result of all the moments that have gone by. And what you will carry with yourself is what you sense right now. Thank you. When we think about eternity, there is a kind of sense of infinity. Being able to go beyond the confines of space and time that you're in right now. No time, 1 moment, 1 minute, an hour. We give time the confinement of this clock, if you like, and yet time never stops. Time always exists. And yet we call time the past, the present, and the future. So that's an interesting aspect of time in itself. So is time eternal? Or is our perception of time eternal? Or is time a finite thing? When you think about eternity, you think about that which is beyond the confines of space and time, in a sense. And yet we know from our own experience that that which is born has to die. That which is new one day becomes old. That which is created, the way in which it's created, will eventually change. That which is constructed also becomes destroyed, or it comes to an end. And our sense of eternity about our own selves, even, all of us are afraid of thinking that one day I will not exist, that the way in which I know myself. Manda, the personality traits, the experiences, the nature of myself, whatever. As if I know one day I will not exist. And our struggle, if you like, seems to be about this. Yet we know absolutely, certainly, with certainty, that one day I will not exist. One day, the way in which I know myself will not exist. And so it seems that we are perceiving the reality of the nature of our world on the basis of what we see, on the basis of what we hear, what we smell, what we touch, and that we're afraid of losing that sense. And yet there's a feeling of myself as beyond just this. I remember when I started my own spiritual journey, I remember looking in the mirror and thinking, is this all I am? Is this what I am? This face, this personality? And I wondered if you've ever done that for your own self, that you look in the mirror and you wonder, is this it? Is this what I am? This face, this character, this mouth, this nose, this reality, is this it? Or is there more to me than meets the eye? And it's a very good question to ask ourselves, because if people related to you in that way, just as whether it's a beautiful woman or it's the face of a handsome man, or I don't know, whatever it is that you identify as being attractive to other people, do I really think of myself only as that? As this beautiful face, whatever. I'm not saying this beautiful face, but the face that I consider that I am. And that is this the personality? That is this all that my relationships are all about? I don't think you would like that. If you thought that people only related to you as this face, as this character, because you want to be seen, you want to be heard, and you want to be understood for who you are as an individual, a person with some character, not just character as in a trait, but someone who's kind or generous or lovely or peaceful or benevolent, whatever it might be. So reality is that we want to be related to beyond what is on the face, what is the face. And we also know that even though we prepare our faces so much or prepare our bodies so much to be appealing to others, and yet we want to be related to beyond that. Isn't that interesting? If somebody really only related to you because you were attractive, or you were appealing to them as a physical human being, that's all that basis was, this would be quite disheartening. And the reality also is that we relate to each other beyond the physical. Even though we live our lives to make our physical appearance appealing, our interactions, our relationship, our appeal to each other is way beyond what we see physically. It's really much more that subtle energy, subtle vibration, the subtle presence, the subtlety of ourselves. And so this is something that I have spent the last 40 years trying to tap into, if you like, that I am beyond this character, the personality of Manda. There are many aspects of this personality that's not so appealing to other people and not so appealing to me. There are many aspects of this personality of Manda that are appealing to other people and to myself. And that's the journey of, you know, process of transformation. And yet, the reason why it is that I want to be able to be seen and heard and understood beyond my personality is that there is something else that drives me. And what I've learned in my journey of spirituality with the Brahma Kumaris is that this life or this play or this world, if you like, is a play between three things. And all these three are living energies. And it's the energy of the soul, the spirit, the conscient, living, thinking being that is behind this physical body, this physical manifestation. Secondly, there is the energy of the divine. And I actually see this energy as the energy of benevolence, the nature of the benevolence of the highest spirit, of the divine. And then there is the energy of matter. The matter changes its shape and form, but it always exists. And so our lives, for me, the subject of eternity becomes very fascinating because I understand the human existence or the existence of our world is an interplay between these three energies that always exist. They change their character, if you like, but they always exist. And they exist. And why it is this notion of eternity, and they may change their shape and form, but they all exist because these are living energies. And these living energies, as time goes on, become influenced by one another. And they manifest themselves really together, if you like, in seeing the world that we see. When I was reading about Plato, I was seeing how he was talking about the reality of the world is not as you physically see it. This is a glass, but I mean, I don't know the detail of the Plato's theory, but that this is what is behind this physical existence is consciousness. And so what I find very interesting is to understand that I am this living, thinking, conscient energy. And for me, it's manifested. Think about a thought or a feeling. Is a thought something that you can say is finite, that it has a beginning and an end? You might think about thought as a beginning and an end from where it stems and where it ends. But what that thought produces as a vibration and an energy, in a sense, never disappears. It never goes away. If I have, or when I have a loving thought, that loving thought, without confines of space and time, if I have a loving thought about Richard, Richard, in one way or another, is going to sense that. He may not know that it's come from Manda, but our energy of thoughts and feelings go beyond space and time, beyond confines of matter even. So that's why you can see how they talk about consciousness being behind matter. And so for me, that thought, that feeling of love becomes an eternal feeling. It reaches Richard, it stays with Richard. It doesn't have to go anywhere. Doesn't mean that it's finished, but it's for all of us, it's the same. Anybody that you think about, that you love or you cherish or you offer a significant thought or a positive thought, that thought becomes an eternal energy. That thought never disappears. And in the same way, so this energy of knowing of myself as this living, thinking, conscient energy that always exists. What doesn't always exist is the present form that this energy fuels, occupies, which is got the title and the name of Manda. Manda may not exist, but Manda in any case is a product today over a long period of time of the actions and interactions and the quality of actions that she has, or that spirit has engaged in. And so I, this living, thinking, conscient energy, always exists. It's when I become trapped and engrossed in this personality that I called Manda, then I give myself, I consider myself to be finite, that I have a beginning and I have an end. And yet the reality is I don't have a beginning and an end. I always exist. And I always exist actually with the personality of peace, with the personality of love, with the personality of joy and wisdom. It's when I lose the awareness of that identity and I adopt the identity of the manifestation of experience over a long period of time, that I no longer see my own value as that. So that's one aspect of eternity. But the other aspect that I want to speak about is this benevolence, the internal nature of benevolence of all beings and all aspects of this physical world. Matter, as we know it, the 5 physical elements of matter, which is earth, water, fire, air, and ether, they all have the benevolent, the nature of benevolence intrinsically within them. Just like the soul intrinsically is good, the benevolent nature of the divine always exists. And in fact, that benevolent nature fuels all aspects of our world, which includes matter. This is a very powerful thing to consider in order to consider the eternal nature of life. Because when we do that, then we adopt these powerful qualities of benevolence, of peace, of love as our eternal qualities. What has happened now is that because we have separated ourselves we've separated all three, soul, matter, and the divine, because we're separated from them and distant from them, and therefore the connection that we have with one another, that connection is lost, so everything becomes finite. And in the world of this, this finite world, what happens to us? We become selfish, we become self-centered, and we become full of pain and sorrow and suffering. So the more we want to let go of pain and sorrow and suffering, the more we hold on to what we know, what we can see, what we can hear, what we can touch. And the more we keep ourselves at a distance from that which is the eternal aspect of the self. So our journey of spirituality, if you like, for me is the journey to be able to tap into that aspect of myself that's beyond the confines of space and time. And that I call consciousness. That I call the spirit. That I call myself, the spiritual being. And when I can, through my own practice of reflection, my practice of silence, through my practice of the awareness of the separation of this physical self, which is limited, which is not immortal, that allows me to build a relationship with all aspects of life. And I'm no longer afraid of losing anything. I'm no longer afraid of coming to an end. Because ultimately, I realize and experience that I never come to an end. I always exist. When I'm at peace, I'm in peace, I am peace, then that peace becomes my doorway, my pathway to my own eternal existence. So what I'd like to do right now is perhaps just stop for a few moments and for us to just reflect on, I figure that you're all here because you already have this sense of the eternity of the self. That's why you're here, to hear about the spiritual nature of eternity. And as we tap into it, as we become aware of it, we become even more safe. We become even more present in today's world of uncertainty. We become even more aware of the beauty of the eternal nature of the spirit. And in this safety lies our own growth. In this safety lies this ability to go beyond all pain, sorrow, and suffering. In this lies the ability to see what's behind what is on the surface and tap into, and not make my internal state of being dependent on what I see, what I touch, and the existence of the reality that I think is true. So let's just stop for a few moments. I'd like to just offer you some reflective thoughts about this. Sit comfortably and relaxed, but alert. So if you're multitasking right now, just sit down. Keep your eyes open and on the screen if you like, but close them if you like. Not if you're so comfortable that you're going to fall asleep. If you're going to fall asleep, keep your eyes open. Take a deep breath. And sense this connection between the physical breath, this oxygen that keeps your body alive, and at the same time, sense this alive nature of your body, your heart, your mind, and this alive nature that creates vibrancy in your being. No matter how still, how silent, how quiet you may feel, become aware of the living nature of the spirit. And it's this nature of the spirit is who you are and what you are. The heartbeat in your chest, the living awareness of this beating heart. This physical heart one day may stop beating, but your own sense of this aliveness of your spirit will go on and on and on. How much are you able to separate yourself from what you call yourself? And really become aware of the real self and this unchanging, constant nature of your true self, living, thinking, conscient energy of peace. And it is with this peace that you're also able to tap into the benevolent nature of the divine. Which always holds you in a safe and loving energy. You are the same benevolent, safe, loving being. And it is this that allows you to bring out the benevolent nature of all life form. Even though in today's world everything has become old and dilapidated, in this old and dilapidated state, the worst of everything is visible. And if there's anything that is finite, it is this. The worst and dilapidated state is finite. It has a beginning and it has an end. But the gentle, loving, peaceful self always prevails. My journey is to keep myself going there again and again and again. So let's stay there for that next few moments. And in this timeless, subtle, profound state, there is no yesterday and there is no tomorrow, but just this time. Each moment, each second leads to the next, and the next, and the next. Om Shanti. Any thoughts?
We've asked for questions to be put in the chat. So if you would like to ask a question, please write it there, and Darshini will collect them and offer them to Manda for her answers. So do avail yourself of this opportunity.
Well, you can always just unmute yourself and ask a question, can't you, if you want to? But it would be nice to see you if you do that.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Where does the consciousness go when the body dies?
It's a good question. Where do you think it goes?
I don't know.
You don't know? Consciousness is a living, thinking entity. From my understanding, consciousness creates the manifestation that we see in our world today. And so my understanding is that, which I would call the spirit, the soul, if you like, it moves on to a next existence because it needs to do that to express itself. So the soul will move on to take another body. Now, when one says that, that kind of causes a bit of not a friction, but confusion in people's minds. It's as if to say that the soul enters someone else's body. It's not that. The soul takes on another body. And so the soul will go into another body that needs to be born in a mother's womb, and then takes another life. So for me, because once the soul has experienced life, it wants to express itself. It wants to relate to other people, and it will go into the next body and the next body. So when you say consciousness and when you say the soul, different connotations, because the soul is an entity. It's an entity of its own. Consciousness feels like it's a more abstract thing, but it's not that. Consciousness is, the soul is a living being, and it is consciousness. But when you use that language, it clarifies, I feel, because it's an entity of its own. And that entity then takes another body, if you like, goes into a mother's womb and takes another body and is born and exists as a human being again. But, you know, in India, we have this powerful saying, you come alone and you go alone. The only thing you carry with yourself is the quality of actions that you've performed and the effect of the actions that you have performed, basically. And so your next existence is determined, if you like, of the energy that you've created through the quality of your actions and interaction. You carry that with you, and that's what you surround yourself with again. I don't know if that helps. Good.
Hi, Manda Ben.
Hi,
Darshini here.
yes, I can see you.
So we have a question in the chat. And it's also a question that I was actually thinking of posing to you. So it, you know, comes at a very timely moment. So the question that we have is, or rather it's more a comment and then sort of like a question. So thank you for the beautiful meditation and talk. It is a struggle to always remember my true self. My soul and my sense of impermanence can overwhelm me at times.
Yeah.
And so
Right.
my question that I wanted to ask you is, you know, based on your own experiences of practicing meditation, how do you handle fluctuations that come and go, these test papers?
This is an excellent question. It's a question, it's an eternal question. It's a question that you can keep asking yourself till you get to that point where you are no longer that. But I think it's about regular and consistent practice. And that means every single day. Ideally, as many times in the day as you can just stop, even for 60 seconds. And go into yourself, be quiet, separate yourself from what's around you in your mind, and just be quiet, be silent, be peaceful. Hold on, keep practicing that again and again and again throughout the day. At the beginning of the day, at the end of the day, try and spend as much time as you possibly can in doing that, whether it's 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 20 minutes or half an hour. Dedicate some time to it so that you can hold on to that experience and naturally hold on to it. You know, it's like we have a saying again in India, furi furi talab, means if you keep putting drops and drops and drops of water, and one day you create a pond for yourself. So it's a little bit like that, in that you keep practicing a moment by moment by moment. And then it's like the pond, your consciousness holds the experiences together. And then when things come your way, you can say, you know what, these things will happen. But I'm going to stay in my own self. The other day, I was with a group of people, and we were just old friends, spiritual friends, talking about where we are at the moment. You know, somebody who's been practicing meditation for 45 years, myself for 40 years, others for 30 years. We were all of different ages, but we've known each other ever since we've been on our spiritual journey. And someone said to me, well, someone said in the group, you know, I find myself being discontent and I'm not happy with myself. You know, it just struck me. I find myself unhappy with myself only when I'm not taking time to get to that place inside myself of myself, my true self, to say, I am peace, I am love, I am sweetness and gentleness. When I take time to stop and do that, then I feel happy about myself. And then someone else said, but you know that I tend to forget that. When something happens, something goes wrong, then I lose it. Then I become discontent. And I lose it because I have not allowed the accumulation of my experience to form a powerful, deep energy. And so it's about practicing every single day. What I find is that people don't practice. They want to, but they don't practice. And then they say, but this doesn't work. It does work. How many times a day do you eat? My eternal question. If you've heard me speak before, you will have heard me ask me this question. How many times a day do you eat? You eat 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, all the cups of teas and coffees and biscuits that you have. Are you hungry every time you eat? Don't think so. We see food and we get hungry, right? We think we need to eat to survive, to keep going, but that's not true. However, how many times a day do you feed your soul? Feed your soul of thoughts of silence, thoughts of peace, thoughts of kindness, positive thoughts. When we feed ourselves, we nurture ourselves. We build energy in ourselves. And it's the same thing with this experience of the eternal self, the true self. Keep going there, keep going there, keep feeding yourself with spiritual thoughts, positive thoughts, loving thoughts, peaceful thoughts. Keep feeding. Then you can do that.
Thank you, Manda Ben. There's a question in the chat where Tim is saying, I'm due to have surgery on my brain tomorrow and frightened by the ordeal. So what should I do and how can I find peace? Because I feel like I'm being punished.
No, yeah, I'm so glad that you're here. Whoever you are, I can't see I don't know the face, but I'm so glad you're here. And I hope that some of the things that we've talked about and the practice of meditation that we just did, carry that with you. Don't be afraid. There's nothing to be afraid of, because, you know, nowadays you're in such good hands. They do amazing things. They're such clever people. They have such refinement of hands. And if you trust, if you stay quiet, if you stay peaceful, then it will become an experience of, you know, this expression, hair through the butter, which is the expression we have in India. And the reason why we have the expression is it's in India, when you make fresh butter, it's very soft. It's very, very soft, like cotton wool. And you can pass hair through that butter. And if you remain peaceful, if you remain quiet, if you remain trusting, it's not an ordeal. Why don't make it an ordeal? If you think of it as an ordeal, it will become an ordeal. But just trust, be quiet, be peaceful, be aware of yourself as this eternal self. And we think of this body as a car. Think of this body as a car. And we have one of our senior teachers who recently had a major heart surgery. She said, oh, well, I just took my car to the garage. The hospital is a garage. I just took my car to the garage to do some repair. And I'll be fine. Once I come out the garage, I'll be brand new again. And it is true. She's 80, major heart surgery, and yet she's amazingly recovering now. So have that kind of attitude, that kind of mindset to give yourself the power, that internal strength. And of course, connect with that benevolent nature of everything, everything. Everything is benevolent and there to serve you. When you take charge of your own mind and your own thoughts and your feelings. Okay.
Manda Ben. This sort of reminds me of my experience with my grandmother. She, you know, my brother is a pharmacist, and he would tell her, you know, when she gets sick, he would tell her, okay, maybe you need to take this medicine and that medicine. And then she'd be like, I don't trust you. You're my grandson, but I'll go to the doctor.
Mm.
She has so much faith in the doctor. She doesn't have the faith in the grandson. And then the doctor would prescribe the same sort of medications that my brother does. But then she comes back home feeling really relieved. But in the end, she doesn't really have, in her situation at least, she doesn't have anything, you know, it's just sort of her anxiety. But just having that faith of knowing that you're in the right hands, with this trusted hands, it made a lot of difference to her.
Okay, great. So what I'd like to suggest, actually, we're almost, well, I don't know if anybody's got a question, but even before the next question. So Tim,
One more.
I've just seen your name on the chat. It was your question about surgery. So what I'd like to do is if you could put your screen up a little bit so we can see more of you. There you go. And I'd like, Rosemary, if you can pin Tim, there you go, you're pinned. And we're all going to give you loving vibrations. So catch those loving vibrations, peaceful vibrations, and you will feel those tomorrow. The moment they put you on the stretcher to take you for your surgery, become aware of these vibrations. How's that?
Thank you.
So if you can lift your screen up a little bit more so we can see you a bit more. There you go. Okay. Okay, so let's just have a couple of minutes. Now you've just seen your eyes. You sat up, but your screen's gone down. Lift your screen up a bit. There you go. Bit more, bit more, bit more. There you go. Perfect. Now stay there. And just become quiet. Sense there's about 50 of us, 46 of us present here. Sending you loving vibrations through our eyes. Aware that you're the living being, the soul, separate from the body. And your body is the costume that you wear. And your body's going to be repaired. And you, the soul, the spirit, is going to experience this amazing journey. Sense the eternal self that you are. You, the living being, always exists. Om Shanti.
Thank you so much for that, Manda Ben. That was a really practical exercise.
Thank you.
We have one question here. Do you consider that it is helpful to think of life as a beautiful dream rather than the hard-edged reality which society encourages us to adopt? Because in the dream state, it is easier to comprehend the eternal than when not in that state.
Interesting question. I'm not sure I would want to think of it as a dream, but I would prefer to think of it as a play. And I'm playing a part and everybody else is playing their part, and no one or nothing is in my control. The only thing that's in my control is what I do and what I think and how I play my own part. So I think if you think of it as a drama, and life is a drama because so many things come at you, just play your part, do the best you can about your own self. And And that's it. And don't try and make anything that you think should happen in the way that you think it should happen, because none of us really know how things should happen. Things should happen the way they're happening. That's it. And how can I make the best of that? That's how I would see it, a play rather than a dream. Because then you're denying something, right? Is that okay?
Perfect. Thank you, Manda Ben. I just wonder if anybody else has any questions they would like to ask. And if not, then I can pass it over to Rosemary for any announcements.
Any more questions first?
None so far from the chat. But lots of thank yous though, Manda Ben. So
Thank you, everyone,
of-
for being there.
Yes.
We can just share.
Many thanks to you, Manda. It's a deep topic and beautifully handled, and much appreciation from all of us for this, for the depth of it as well, the gentleness as well. May I say that we will have another talk on April 29th, and we have Sister Go